structure. Again, the big sort of mindset and strategy shift here is going from Ayurveda as a commodity where you pay for a session. Right? So every time that you come in, you have to come up against that investment barrier. You got to, one of the hardest things to get people to do is to pull out their wallet and give you money. So, if we can do that once instead of repetitively, that makes things easier for both of us. So you move from basically taking Ayurveda as a commodity to creating a structure, a program that moves people towards results, helps people achieve results. So you're now no longer working on an hourly basis or a session-by-session basis. You're enrolling people in an overall path. And then you create a structure around that. So on the personal health and healing side, I personally like to work with people for 6 months at a time. I think a year is great too. On the business side, I've been working with clients for 3 months at a time. And the general structure, as I describe it, is like this. I say, so I work with my clients for 6 months at a time, and we work together on a weekly basis. We've got an hour in the schedule each time. It's a consistent anchor where we come back, and this is after we've described what and how we actually do our work. And if something else is up, and you can decide your own boundaries around this sort of thing. But if anything else is up for you, you feel free to give me an extra call. I do a lot of emailing with my clients. Email me as much as you need to or want to. I want you to feel like you have a blanket of support so that you have everything that you need to overcome these challenges and to achieve these results. So when we put it out there like that, it's very abundant. And it takes it out of the whole idea of paying on an hourly basis sort of thing. And so I'll say, you might take a vacation, I might take a vacation. We'll take time away from each other every now and then, but otherwise we're going to have that consistent anchor in place. And that way you don't have to deal around, mess around with 1 week you might not have a session. That's okay, that's fine, but it doesn't need to change anything. It's still it's a program, and especially when you're doing it for 3 months or 6 months or a year, there's a sense of there's plenty there. I've got all the support I need. And it creates a different framework, a different space to be working in. So I like that a lot. So that's kind of the structure piece, and then building your program is really the other place where I love this because I'm like I've got plenty of Vata in me, a 7 on the Enneagram, interested in many endeavors. And over the course of things, I've been a consistent student of integral philosophy. I've studied and practiced nonviolent communication, Ayurveda, different sorts of yoga. I've learned about different typology systems like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, and gotten to get the full landscape. I've done community organizing and worked in sustainability. So putting all those pieces together. One moment. Actually, we'll just let it do its thing, and I'll turn it off. Actually, Rob, can you grab it there and just off it real quick? Follow the sound. It's in the backpack there. It didn't? Is that it? It stopped. All right, I'll turn it off there at the break. So, with all that, I have really gotten a sense for and obviously for all of us, really looking at what allows us to make long-term, lasting, sustainable change in our life. There's a whole ecology around it. And in our Ayurvedic training, we get taught mainly just about the behavior quadrant. We say, okay, get to know the nature of your patient, the nature of the disease, and the nature of the remedy. And in terms of our academic training, when we talk about the nature of the patient, we tend to get their constitution, and the nature of the disorder, we understand the qualities, but the nature of the remedy, we just prescribe behaviors. We say, okay, this is what will produce harmony for you, balance for you, to get what you want. But that's just information at that point. And even though that's valuable, that's only a fraction of really what it takes to actually support people to implement new behaviors in their life. And to really even be able to hold new results in their life. Sometimes people get results, but then they go back, right? So we understand why that is. So the Integral Ayurveda platform then looks at making the behaviors very clear and very high leverage, meaning that if you actually do this, you're going to get a big change out of it, right? So we focus on the most important stuff first, and then other stuff down the road. But then we look at, well, what is the inner experience? Who does this person need to be aligned with being able to take this new behavior and hold these new results? Because it's not the same person they are right now. So we facilitate, the resolution of thoughts and beliefs and patterns of energy in the body that could sabotage their success. So we end up with here, the individual, the interior and the exterior of the individual and the collective. So we could basically call this I, and this it, and this its, systems of it, and we. And we want to make sure that all of those are aligned, so that in this place we're looking at behavior, and in this quadrant we're looking at the person's experience. In this quadrant we're looking at their culture. In this quadrant their society. So we can still look through the lens of behavior changes, because really, we have the results that we have in our life because of the actions and behaviors we take on a regular basis. So if we want new results, we need to take new actions, implement new behaviors. So that is the beginning part of our lens. When we look through and we look at, okay, if I'm focused on these, women who are feeling depressed, what are the biggest things they could change in their behavior, the biggest actions they could shift that would make the most difference for them? And the three main behavior areas that we have to work with are our three pillars of life: food, sleep, and sex. So we can draw from any of those three categories. And by food, we mean intake through all five of the senses and the digestion of that information. By sleep, we mean the balance between rest and activity, so not just sleep cycles, but also exercise, movement, that sort of thing. And by sex, we mean not just physical sex, but the management of vital energy, which would include any sort of inner practices that we give people: meditation, breath work, being able to be present and aware with feelings, be able to watch feelings. So any sort of internal practices would fall into that space, including sex, the use of the actual sexual energy, and its cultivation. And that one's, that's so important. I think that one gets diminished. Or a lot of times people see food, sleep, and sex, and they think that sex is just that. But our eros, our erotic energy, is really like the essence of life moving through us. So we look at those three areas and we say, okay, within food, sleep, and sex, what are the big leverage behaviors that would make a big impact for these women? And it's going to be individual, but they're also going to be trends. One of the other big benefits of focusing on the market is you're able to see patterns, ways of thinking, ways of acting that continually produce these challenges. And that's also going to form your theory and your philosophy of change that you work with. You talk about your what aspect of your content. And that's going to be important for them because it's one of the 4 learning styles, is having a framework for what are we actually talking about here? What causes these challenges for us? And why is this solution that you're representing, how does that work? How does that create something different? So when you know the behaviors that are going to make the big changes, then you can build your whole philosophy and all of your content around that. It's very concrete and specific. And with each behavior that we recommend, we want to make sure that it lands. And the way that we can make something land is using the 4 learning styles, which are why, what, how, and what if. So very briefly, why again is we're using both the desire and the fear. If you want this and you don't want that, listen up. And then here's what to listen to. Here's how this challenge comes about in you. Here are the qualities of it. Here are the way that the doshas work to produce this. Here are the actions that you're taking right now that are contributing to this, right? And you get how all these pieces fit together, and make sure that's clear that they're on board with basically the philosophy of it. And then say, so here's what we're going to do different. We're going to give you this, this single action that's going to, generate these qualities, or do this instead. We're going to swap this behavior out so that you get a new result. And here's exactly how to do it. So we do the how. Here's the recipe of action steps. Do this first, then do this, then do this. And then here's the what if action. What are you going to do immediately after this session to get the ball rolling with this, to implement this change? What's your immediate action step to move this forward? But that's all exists basically just within behavior. So where we go to next after that is the experience quadrant. And the questions I like to ask that get me information about what, if anything, needs to get resolved there, is this. When you think about, taking this new action, implementing this new behavior, or even when you think about even getting this new result, do you feel anything other than peace or joy? So one thing we know in Ayurveda is that the primordial cause of disease is forgetting our true nature as spirit. And when we're abiding in ourself, when we're in a state of health, svastha, we experience our true nature. And the way that I describe that concretely is that my body is relaxed but turned on at the same time. My heart is happy and my mind is clear. So one way that we can check in and see, are they in their truth with this right now, is when you think about implementing this new behavior or getting this new result, do you feel anything other than peace or joy? So we want to check in. Where are the areas of contraction? Where are the hidden thoughts and beliefs and feelings and patterns of energy? And then the basic process that Michelle was referring to is we can assess, we can look at any of the thoughts and the beliefs and we can say, okay, how do those serve you or not? And we can trade them in for better thoughts and beliefs. But the fastest route there, the thing that has the biggest influence on whether or not we change in our life, are our feelings. And when we talk about fear, fear is basically a fear of feeling something. It's pretty much what all fear is. Either feeling something physically or feeling something psychologically or emotionally. We don't want to get beat up. And we also don't want to feel emotional pain. Sometimes that drives us even more. So, but what we find is that when we actually are able to be present with fear, aware of fear, and go into it, fear is just a name we've come up with for energy. Fear, anxiety is moving away from energy in the body. And when the energy gets bigger than the container, and when we start moving away from it with our awareness, we call that fear or anxiety. It has an upward and outward movement. It's vata in nature. So we say basically, okay, wherever you feel that feeling, where do you feel it the most in your body? And we invite them just to be present with that and aware with it. And just feel the feeling. Let it be intense. Let it be whatever it is. And if it shifts or moves or changes in any way, to go there then. And what will happen is, usually the only way out is through. So they will come out on the other side, And there may be some other emotions that come up in the meantime. There could be anger, and what we're doing with anger is we're taking that energy and we're taking the discomfort that we feel and then we're turning it into a right-wrong thought. So something or somebody is wrong usually, or shouldn't be, or should be a certain way. And when we do that, we feel anger. So that's that energy projected outwards with a right-wrong thought. And as we sit with fear and actually can be present with it, the other thing that's often underneath fear is sadness, grief. So there can be tears. And all of my clients will cry at some point or another, and that is welcome. So one thing that I let all of them know is that the space is safe. Everything that you've got to bring is welcome. There's nothing that I'm going to be judging you about. And this is what allows you to actually make real change in your life. So underneath sadness, and one thing I will encourage is that even if they're crying, I'll say, don't let that take you away from being present with the feeling. If tears come, they come, but go ahead and keep your awareness there on the place where it feels there. And I'll let it be just as big as it needs to be. But what will happen is usually through that consistent attention, the other side of the coin of sadness is love. And if we're going to make any significant change in our life, we've been doing whatever we've been doing currently for a very good reason. It's been a strategy to try to attempt our needs, to meet our needs, consciously or unconsciously. So we have to actually get alignment and be in a place where we can be connected to our truth and feel going forward with that behavior. So when they're there, I'll check in again and I'll say, all right, now from this place, when you think about implementing this behavior and this new action and getting this new result, do you feel anything other than peace or joy? And see if there's anything else. So we can take one single action, and if it takes a month, 2 months, 3, if it takes a whole 6 months for this person to implement this one action, but it sticks for life, that's so much more valuable than if we've given them a dozen, gem elixirs and stuff to not implement, to not really have a significant change. So that's the experience piece, the I quadrant. And oftentimes they'll surface their own, new beliefs and new thoughts and understanding. Like when we go to that place of awareness, we're able to see really clearly the thoughts and the beliefs and the things that are in place, right now. And if they go into thoughts and beliefs, I'll keep on bringing them back into the body because that's where most of this work happens. I'll say, when you think that thought, where do you feel it in the body? Then we can go down to culture, which is the collective interior, the we space. Right? So we all share something. We're our people. We're connected through Ayurveda. We can guess that we share a lot of similar values. And when that happens, it's kind of interesting because the interior is parts of people we can't really see. And so when we get each other, that's kind of a magic moment. So the we space is made up of the culture that we belong to, which are the groups of people that we associate, sort of the camps that we belong to, as well as all of our intimate relationships. And the key thing here is about belonging. So just like ahamkara at the I level, whenever there's a real or significant change, it resists it because it's unfamiliar, it's change. It's basically interpreted as death, and the rebirth is uncertain. So even when it's brighter and a better, healthier future, there can be avoidance of it. Well, that happens at the collective level as well. There's an ahamkara to a collective, and there's a sense that if somebody sort of breaks rank with a group, or in a relationship, if either person makes a change, even if it's a healthier change, the dynamic of the relationship shifts. And so unconsciously, we can sabotage our own growth and development to preserve the familiarity of a relationship. So there's risk involved in changing results in our life, perceived there. So the questions I'll ask there are very similar. So now let's check in with any relationships and basically your culture, your world that you're a part of. When you think about implementing this new behavior or getting these new results, what do you think the impact will be on your relationships? We want to kind of take inventory. Are there relationships in place that are going to automatically sort of support this, that could be prioritized and really anchored and drawn upon? And are there significant, relationships or groups or aspects that are going to be, where it's going to be a disruption? There's going to be a change there. So when this one isn't addressed, even when these two are, the person can be like basically in a state where they feel very connected to all this, but then they get back into this other culture and whatever work we just did just disappeared. Yeah. So the way we do that is we bring that to the table right there. We say, okay, how's this going to impact relationships? We're very real about, what this behavior means for getting this new result. So what we want to do is basically, in the collective space, we can do two things. We can add something or we can take something away. So we want to add as many things that can be aligned with the way this person wants to think and feel so that they can take these actions. And we want to take away or modify or change any of the things that are making this person, feel crappy or stuck or, aren't doing that. And then we do the same thing in the its space, the society space, is the collective exterior. What are all the environments and shared behaviors, and systems that we're a part of? So at a basic level, I'll check and I'll say, where's this going to fit into your schedule? Is there any way this is going to change your schedule, or where's this going to live in the system of your day and your shared behaviors with other people? And is there anybody, any of these relationships that we just identified that are support ones, do they want to play with you as well on the system side? Or, is it basically going to be, practically essential that they come on board for this to actually stick? So this would relate to usually families and stuff. If somebody's trying to lose some weight or something, and their house is filled with processed food, if their house continues to stay filled with processed food, they're just going to be having to fight it, try to willpower their way every day, and that's going to be a limited resource for them. They will crack. They will go down, and they'll feel bad about it. So much easier to optimize that environment and say, okay, who else needs to be on board for optimizing this environment? And then as many people as we can kind of get on board with the shared behaviors, it makes it now automatic and we're flowing downstream. It's the basic idea that if you hang out in the ashram, you meditate, and if you hang out in the bar, you drink. So systems, shared behaviors, environments. And when all of these are lined up, change becomes not only easier, but inevitable. Anything that we want in our life, whether it's in health, relationships, wealth, this is the basic ecology of change. What's the new action we need to take? Who do we need to be to take that action? And how can we optimize our collective space so that we're flowing downstream rather than fighting the current? So unless you're doing a group program or something where you are specifically covering chunks and chunks of material with one-on-one consulting and coaching, your program is basically just helping people implement changes, through this model. It's not a specific step-by-step, written out thing, unless you've created it that way. And typically that makes more sense for a group environment. Over the next 12 weeks, we're going to be covering these things and taking you through and still working this way of doing it. But with one-on-one coaching, the program is that. It's one-on-one coaching and consulting. But when we talk about building it, it's like you want to have a framework in your mind for how you're going to be working with people and what your weekly sessions look like. So the format I like for that is an opening connection where we open our bodies up, we land here. It can be a meditation, it can be whatever, but we create rapport and connection, and we hear about any results. So what's happened in this week for you? And then we check in with okay, so what are you wanting out of today? What are you wanting in your life? What's up next for you? We're always staying grounded in the concrete, specific behaviors that need to change. So we come back to that again and again as our anchor point. But then our session, an hour or whatever we're spending with the person, is basically about seeing, okay, what else needs to happen here? We're your supporter there to create accountability, but also to look at opportunities and options. One of two things is going to happen, right? They are either going to be able to implement behavior and set these things up to support that to stick, or not. And both of those are great. If it's implemented, then we say, okay, so what's next for you? Where do you want to go from here? What else do you want? If it's not, then we just look at, well, what's getting in the way in each of those areas. So how's that feel in terms of structure and putting together a program, building a program? Any thoughts or questions there?
Can you cover this quadrant and this system initially when at an interview you cover all these steps? I'm just wondering.
Well, let's talk about enrollment. When we go through the enrollment process, I'll show how I introduce this.
Great.
Yeah. Any others? Yeah.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask this question, but you did. The part where you were talking about is like what structure is in place in their life, and will this affect their relationships?
Mm-hmm.
Do they jointly live in the house?
Mm-hmm.
If they tell you, yeah, my husband thinks that I'm crazy for going to an Ayurvedic practitioner, and
Yeah.
he's completely unwilling to get the processed food out of the
Yeah.
thing, and wants me to pick this totally other type of food, and
Yeah.
I feel like I have to do that.
Yeah.
That tends to be a sticky point that I find
Yeah.
a lot. So
Yeah. So, I'll say it this way differently than I might say it in the actual moment, but basically, how's that working out for you, handing all of your power out like that? Yeah. How's that affecting your relationship? Yeah. And if that's what you want and that's where you're at, then cool.
Do you ever refuse clients on that basis?
Do I refuse clients on that basis? No, it's basically that moment's going to come. And, what I'm here to do is support you to get where you want to get the results that you want. And, logically and rationally, if you want that new result, it means changing this behavior. And this is a snag around changing this behavior, wouldn't you agree? What do you want to do about that? Is it, how important is this to you? I said, I know the cost. You've shared the cost with me about how this affects your energy, how this actually affects your sense of what you can do in your work, your mobility, the fear around dying early. You don't like having this extra weight. So we know the costs of what's in place here. What are the costs to your husband? What are the costs to that? So we continue to be curious about looking at how's that working out for you, basically. So what I'm not going to say is well, you have to change that or else I'm not going to see you.
Yeah, well, no, I find it's a real sticky point because people will come in and they'll be like, I just find that, I keep trying to do this, or I keep trying to buy this thing. My husband says this food is too expensive, and why should we buy organic food and
Yeah.
all this stuff? And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm dealing with their husband more than I'm dealing with them.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's
And life has sticking points, and this is the science of life.
right.
And so we're gonna deal with sticking points.
So with this, can we do a little segue that's what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Just resisting making a change, kind of ultimately. A lot of times people probably already know, like, I eat like crap,
Yeah.
I go to bed too late. I mean, it's
Yeah.
usually fairly obvious things.
That's not the big insight isn't there usually. Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Right.
it's not that what we do all the time is so esoteric.
Yeah.
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 So it really comes down to resistance. People are going to say, like, what you're saying, like, oh, I can't. I hear that a lot. Oh, I couldn't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, really? But why? You know, it's usually my
Yeah.
sort of response to like, wow.
Yeah, and I think part of it is getting engaged, getting sort of buy-in with the solution itself, which when you use the 4 learning styles, that methodology of the, like we have room for improvement in this area as well, even though that's our main, education is in that space. But when we do that, when we basically say, okay, here's what you're wanting and what you're not wanting, and here's what you're doing right now that's giving you what you don't want, and here and how that works, like why that is, and and do you get that? Does that make sense to you? Like, are you on with that? And they're like, yeah, totally, that's there. If it's not, then we don't want to go forward. We want to get connection there, get understanding there, and then say, so here's the new behavior. It's like the big leverage one, the single biggest behavior you could change that would have the most results for you, the biggest impact. And here's how that works and why. So does that make sense to you? Is that clear? And here's exactly how to do this, new behavior. And then, here's what I'm suggesting is the thing to do right away to put this in place. And so we're checking in with them along each of those pieces there. And, and if they say, I couldn't do that or whatever, then they're just hopping right over to here. So we're just checking in. It's like, okay, so where's the fear, where's the concern? All right, so it's not that part's a problem. It's just like we approach health as, or disease as a teacher, as an invitation to find where we could have greater harmony rather than an enemy. We approach resistance in the same way. Like, cool, all right, tell me more about that, about why you couldn't do that. Yeah. So it's fun because you get to be in this place of questioning and curiosity and holding space without absolute, zero responsibility for this other person. They get to be their own empowered individual. We just facilitate that.
And that's what I see is really so brilliant about this.
Yeah.
Is because these things always come up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's like, okay, well this is something she or he needs to work on.
Yeah.
But so then these other 3 areas are unconscious.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is it's brilliant.
What scientists do is look at things more clearly in more detail. And we're scientists of life. So we're laying life out on the table here and saying, let's take a look. What's going on? Great. Excellent. So yeah, we'll those are the 2 areas, the external business strategy, the how and the what. And then the methodology are the 2 areas where I feel like we've got the most to offer, the biggest gains that we can capture in our profession this year.